Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from the Relationship Advice subreddit from P. Salters, and it does have some trigger warnings on it of health issues, weaponized incompetence, mentions of depression, and postpartum too. So if you do want to skip the story, please feel free to do so. Timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below. Thank you. It's titled, My 24 Female Husband, 23 Male, Faked Fainting After I Gave Birth. My husband and I have been together for 5 years. I want to start by saying that, despite his quirks, my husband is genuinely sweet and hardworking. I truly believe he loves me deeply, tries his best, and has always dreamed of being a husband and father. That's why this whole situation has left me confused and conflicted. We got pregnant a bit sooner than expected, though it wasn't entirely unplanned. In the first trimester, I was lucky to avoid nausea, but the fatigue hit me hard, especially during my final university exams. I had to nap 1 to 2 hours every afternoon just to function. At the time, we didn't know that this kind of exhaustion was a normal pregnancy symptom, and I was so focused on school that I didn't think much of it. Meanwhile, my husband quietly started resenting me. He thought I was being lazy because I wasn't keeping up with the housework, which, except for dishes, was mostly my responsibility. Thankfully, a friend asked if I'd been hit by the tiredness and explained that it's important I rest. He seemed to understand, but I guess it bugs me that faced with his wife being utterly exhausted, his first reaction was to think of me as lazy and be annoyed rather than concerned. Throughout the rest of my pregnancy, his attitude often felt off. He'd get annoyed by what I thought were small requests, like bringing me water before bed, and complained about the size of my pregnancy pillow. Well, he always apologized later on if I let myself get sad about it. I felt like there was something he wasn't saying. Friends told me to enjoy the pregnancy pampering, but I didn't experience any of that. He treated me the same as before and seemed irritated when I couldn't keep up. Despite everything, I had a fairly easy pregnancy physically, and emotionally I responded very well to the crazy levels of estrogen, making me quite happy and hopeful. I stayed upbeat and tried to be as pleasant and positive as possible. During this time, he started getting really into these men's experiences during pregnancy podcasts and would vent about how no one considers what fathers go through, which I sympathized with. Then came the birth. After a long and sleepless labor, I needed an emergency C-section. I gave birth around midnight, and since partners couldn't stay overnight, he went home. I stayed awake with our newborn for a 4th night in a row while he returned the next morning. He told me he fainted on the way home, showed me how dirty his jacket was after falling. I was concerned, but was so depleted I could barely process it. During a hospital stay, he brought food and held the baby while I slept, but his attitude still felt annoyed. I chalked it up to stress. Then came the newborn phase. Our son was colicky, I was exhausted, and we argued constantly. I couldn't be my usual sweet self, and I desperately needed emotional support. He, on the other hand, seemed to want sympathy too. At one point, it had been 5 days since the baby had a bath, and he inquired of me annoyed. I didn't turn on my filter and said, "Why didn't you give him a bath then?" He responded that he didn't know how and was upset, and I told him to Google it. He felt overwhelmed working 3 to 4 hours a day and microwaving meals twice daily, so researching baby baths was apparently too much. I ended up taking our baby to all his appointments alone because my husband looked so irritated when tired that nurses started asking questions. I could say a lot more, but here's my main concern. Recently, we revisited the topic of my pregnancy and our son's birth. I told him I felt unsupported during that time. That's when he confessed that he lied about fainting after the birth, so I would feel bad for him. He apparently only slipped on the ice. He felt ignored and unimportant during the pregnancy. Every time he talked to friends, they told him to focus on supporting me, and he started to feel invisible. While I understand the desire to feel seen, to lie about something like this when I truly needed support feels deeply hurtful. I explained that being a supportive partner is not meaningless. It's actually a vital, powerful role. He was remorseful, but I don't know if this is expecting too much from him. Things are better between us today, but honestly, I don't think I want him with me the next time I give birth. I feel like it'd be easier to mentally prepare for doing it alone than to split my emotional focus between giving birth, the baby, and managing his feelings again. TLDR, my husband lied about fainting after I gave birth to our son. I feel unsupportive, but I'm scared I'm putting too much pressure on him. How do we move forward from this? You mentioned at one point that you don't want him with you the next time you give birth. Not thinking about having another baby with this guy for one, because you've got to look at the bigger picture here, and that there's a pattern here that resenting her for a pregnancy fatigue, complaining about the pregnancy pillow, getting annoyed at bath time, and even leaving nurses so unsettled that they started asking questions. This guy just wasn't there for you when you probably needed him the most. In fact, he resented you instead. Why the fuck do you want that in your life? A commenter said to OP, I don't think he tries his best, and I think you're giving him too much credit by claiming he is doing so. He's failing as a father and a husband. He knows this, and yet he does not even care to know how to clean his own child. The man you described in the first paragraph sounds like a fantasy you superimposed over this unsupportive, lying jackass. Commenter replies saying, I'm also really curious about the work dynamic of this relationship. He works 3 to 4 hours for a workday. Is OP the breadwinner, nanny, and maid? Part of me hopes so, because that would make it that much easier to leave this asshat. OP says he is the breadwinner. After his 1 week-ish paternity leave, he took half the day off to support us for a while longer. Now he's back working full-time from his home office. I wish to be a stay-at-home mum. He does the dishes, cooks 2 to 3 times a month, takes care of our dog, and helps with baby when he has time. OP on her husband's work schedule and how much he's been helping with their baby. OP says, well, his work schedule is kinda wacky because of across-the-sea clients. We wake up at 8 to 9 sometimes. He lets me sleep in for an hour. Sometimes I let him sleep in for an hour. I'm a morning person, so I usually have more energy for the baby in the morning. We eat brunch together unless I have errands to run, which I would bring the baby for. He does the dishes while I do some chores if the baby is happy playing on the floor or napping. He then works from 12 to 8, while I juggle baby and whatever else I can manage that day. I usually start to prep dinner at 3:30. We have a dinner break at 5 to 6:30, where he takes the little guy while I finish putting dinner on the table. Then he goes back to work, but he usually do baby's bedtime routine, 20 minutes at 8, but I have to nurse him to sleep. Then we get some time together from 9:30 to 11:45 when I go to bed and he finishes up his work, eats the dog, and usually joins me at 11:30 at night, unless he has a lot of work left. The commenter says to OP, every one of these starts with, I just want to say that my hubby is generally awesome and super supportive, and then it's paragraphs of just how awful, unsupportive, selfish, and mean the husband is. I think it's almost second nature for us to not want to see our partners as bad people, because why would we be in a relationship with bad people? But your husband isn't nice. He wasn't caring, he isn't supportive, and you have a valid reason to feel like he wasn't there for you. OP says, well, I think everyone has some bad and some good in them. It's our responsibility to train ourselves to do the right actions and draw out what's good. This is easy to do when life is a calm summer day. The real challenge is when things get tough. We are like a cup of coffee. If you bump into it, some coffee will spill out and the hot coffee burns you. When life bumps into us, some of our core spills out. For both me and my husband, our spills have both been too hot to handle and therefore we quarrel. If one of us had a cool spill, our temperatures would even out. And seeing how these events seemingly have been afflicting me harder overall, I wish you would even out our temperatures. One of my biggest flaws is that I have no sense of self-preservation. I just push on through everything, and this makes it too easy for a slightly emotional, immature guy to understand the need to reflect and anticipate over his own responses to a big bump from life. Anyway, most people lose sight of the sun in the midst of a storm, and all they talk about is the storm, even though they logically know the sun is behind all of it somewhere. Last summer I was able to write down 40 great things about my husband in 3 minutes, but right now I can't recall a single thing. My dismay at his current behavior has temporarily colored all my feelings towards him at the moment, even though I know the list of things he does well is still true. The difference that I didn't state clearly enough is that he has shown remorse and is willing to change. I'm just annoyed that he wasn't able to be insightful enough to see how his behavior was unacceptable from the start and change sooner. Opie then clarifies on the meals per month and that there are 70 to 90 meals a month and says fair confusion. I wasn't clarifying. We eat twice a day, brunch is usually leftovers or I make myself porridge. I was mainly talking about dinner. We eat leftovers 2 times a week for dinner and cook for the remaining 5 days. He He cooks almost one dinner a week, so 3/20. Which, given his work schedule, which I also should have clarified is currently 8 hours if not more, is fair. So it was 10 months later that OP did update their post and says, "It's been almost a year." So I thought I'd give an update in case anyone is wondering. First, I want to thank everyone who took the time to comment, message me, or simply read and reflect on the post. When I wrote the original post, I was in a very poor postpartum mental state and felt lost and extremely lonely. Seeing people even care a little bit made me feel less alone and reflect more on my own self-worth. I also want to mention that I don't think I properly explained our situation or what my husband was doing all day. I left out some details to keep the original post short and readable. Both my husband and I were incredibly sleep deprived at the time. I wasn't even fully aware of or able to process how difficult our situation really was. Our son had colic and needed to be fed up to 15 times a day, exclusively breastfed and held almost constantly, day and night. We slept in shifts, but neither of us were getting proper sleep. In our country, the cause behind colic is never investigated unless you pay out of pocket to go to private hospitals, so the nurses and doctors brushed us completely off. There was also a misunderstanding about my husband's work. The company he works for is very stingy with hours. He has to report his active work in 15-minute increments and only gets paid for those. However, because of time zone differences, he spends a lot of time preparing for work and staying available for messages, because he was often hovering around his computer. I felt like he was working and unavailable to help for 7 to 11 hours a day. In reality, that usually added up to only 4 to 5 hours of paid work. In between tasks, meetings, and waiting for messages, he would do dishes, take care of the dog, grocery shop, and change diapers. On top of that, we were also dealing with visa trouble. A mistake the immigration department made, which meant we had to spend a lot of time and money on lawyer visits, reapplying and gathering documents. That said, this doesn't excuse his behavior. The response to the original post definitely turned into quite the choral demand of divorce. So let me start off by saying we're still married and things did indeed work out. A few days after I made the original post, one of our fights escalated to the point where I left to stay with my grandma for a couple of nights. That seemed to trigger my husband to realize he could potentially lose us. About a week later, he found the post and confronted me about it. Initially, he was very upset because he felt completely misrepresented, but it also led him to reflect on himself. We spent a lot of time talking about our relationship, reading relationship advice and books together, praying together, and reflecting on the past. Around the start of summer, we all started sleeping a little better, which made us more functional and relaxed. He understood that if the way I described things in the original post was truly how I viewed him and our lives, then he needed to change. And slowly, he did. We also moved to a quieter environment, and as I started to manage motherhood better and regain some brain capacity, our communication improved a lot. One of the biggest changes for me after having our child was realizing that I no longer had the capacity to manage or be responsible for my husband's emotions. He's responsible for himself, and I stopped making excuses for him or making up for his shortcomings or shove everything under the carpet like my family tends to do. In other words, I became much more blunt in our conversations and stood up for my opinions more clearly. This helped us establish our expectations, how we view and show love, and how we divide work and responsibilities within our marriage. At the same time, he learned that his goal shouldn't be to keep the peace at all times and avoid tough conversations in order to spare my emotions. To add more context, he was also dealing with a pretty serious depressive episode that he was hiding while I was pregnant. At the time, he was actually working around 10 to 11 hours a day, which contributed to him building up resentment towards me and struggling to show compassion or affection. Even though this year has probably been the most difficult year of my life, and I grew up severely neglected for reference, it still feels worth it in the end. Now, he is a great dad and husband. He gets excited about our child's milestones and growing interests. He lets me sleep in when he can, takes the brunt of the night wake-ups, helps plan and prepare baby meals, and makes an excellent effort to be thoughtful and considerate. He really tries to listen to me, and he feels much more like the man I first met and fell in love with. I'm still struggling with low self-worth, and I find it hard to ask for simple favors. I think, however, discovering Mr. Rogers while watching it with Kiddo has actually been helping a bit. And while we still quarrel, all of our arguments finally tend to resolve calmly and in a timely way. After the long visa dispute and all the immigration lawyer and application costs, we unfortunately don't have the money for individual therapy or couples counseling right now, but it's something we both want to pursue as soon as we have a bit more financial stability. Anyway, Thank you for reading all of this. I'm still open for advice if you have any. Is this marriage salvageable? A commenter says to AP, I think you did salvage it. Seriously, that is some serious growth on both your parts, and I recommend you stop for a moment and appreciate that. Well done. I agree with the other commenter. Do not have another child right away or in the near future, even if it might sound enticing. You didn't mention you were planning to, but just throwing it out there. I think getting stable and enjoying what you have built together is the way forward. Again, congrats to making these changes for your family. It sounds like a lot of hard work is paying off, and you should stop and smell the flowers, so to speak. Pat yourselves on the back, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Good luck. Opie says thank you for your kind words. We don't have space nor the money for another child right now anyway, so we will definitely wait for the right time. The commenter says, I remember reading your last post and I'm glad things are going better for you now. Honestly, you're both still very young, so I do think some immaturity and arguing is forgivable, as long as both people in the relationship are always actively working to improve themselves in the relationship. This is part of what people mean when they say marriage takes work. It sounds like your husband did accept responsibility for his actions and has been stepping up to be both a better husband and father, which is a great sign. No one can predict the future, and only you truly know how your husband makes you feel. Do you feel safe with him? Do you feel like you can rely on him? Do you feel like you would have your back right now if something went wrong? From what you described solely in this post, things do sound promising. If you can't afford couples counseling, that's totally fine. Perhaps you can both schedule a check-in week where you each discuss the current state of your mental health, how stressed out you are now, where you feel like you're struggling or could use help, but also what you noticed over the past week about your partner that made you appreciate them. It might help you both keep up to date with each other's feelings, keep resentment down by acknowledging the work the other does, and you might find it easier to communicate your needs if it's in a meeting scheduled specifically for that reason. You could try writing down things throughout the week that you feel you want to bring up later, so you don't forget. Hope things continue to improve, and I wish the best for you and your family. Opie responded saying, thank you for the comment. I have a hard time trusting anything, but he is definitely the person I trust the most in the world because every time he makes a mistake, he is honest about it and he tries his best not to repeat it. Thank you for your advice. Another commenter says the only advice I'd give at this point is to hold off having a second child until you manage to get that counseling together. But overall, you both seem to have put in the effort and rebuilt your relationship, so I'm happy for you. And one more commenter says, I think you can probably be cautiously optimistic but continue to be watchful. Go to marriage counseling before your next kid. Otherwise, I would bet money on him doing the exact same thing. Men feeling the need to go center themselves during a woman's pregnancy are pathological. I'm uncomfortable when it's not about me. And until he addresses the root of that, it's going to happen again. And whilst there was a lot of positive comments on there saying that things are going in the right direction, there was also people skeptical of the future, especially given that the weird work schedule, the fact that in other parts of the post where he was talking about the baby not being bathed for 5 days, he seemed to have kept count about it, but actually did nothing. The fact that he faked fainting in the first place, all this kind of stuff. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. Our next story was posted on the Best of Redditor updates from I'm Miravela, pronunciation, I do apologize, and it says today I effed up by asking a girl to go out on a date. It started with a different title though, saying I'm losing my mind over a girl I can't have. It says, so for a little pre-context, I'm the legal guardian, female 27, of my younger sister. She's in primary school, so I still need to take her to and pick her up from school. Usually I just stay at the school to wait for her. This was my biggest mistake. I met Danny, female 25, my sister's advisor. I know this sounds cliche and corny, but from the moment I saw her, I was immediately smitten. She's pretty and she gave me gay vibes. At first, I told myself it was nothing. The gay vibes was just really strong, and given how the school was a Christian school, I was just curious, so I checked her social media. Confirmed. She's gay, but she was in a long-term relationship and had just recently broken up. This time, I knew it wasn't just curiosity because I look forward to seeing her every day already. She always smiles at me and greets me whenever she sees me. Not just during drop-off and pick-up too, even during breaks since the waiting area is right next to the cafeteria. She's also super nice to my sister, to the point that she'll bring my sister over to me in the waiting area. I bring my laptop and work while waiting. This happened a few times and I apologized profusely every time. I also sent her like an apology and appreciation gift. She just sent me a thank you note in return. Anyway, I know she's just doing her job, and me being a delulu knows I have to stop myself before I spiral. I decided to block her on social media since I keep checking for updates. I've also stopped waiting for my sister at her school. Every morning, I'll just drop her off and pick her up quickly after for lesser interactions. I also do it when she's the busiest, so she doesn't greet me anymore. I was doing better doing all these. She had stopped living rent-free in my head. However, recently, my sister had separation issues, so I had to stay at her school again to wait for her. Our paths started crossing again, which was normal since we're literally inside the same school grounds, but it feels like it's more now than before. She seems to be everywhere I look. She also tries to initiate small talk now when there's a chance. I know I'm a grown-ass woman and I can handle this, but at times it's so hard to pretend everything's fine when my insides are rumbling whenever I see her. So this is where the original part of the post came in. Today I effed up by asking a girl out on a date. And it said, I've, female 27, have a crush on this girl, Danny, female 25, for some time now. However, I didn't want to make a move because she's my little sister's teacher. I just felt it was inappropriate. I've confirmed through her social media that she's gay and that she's single. I tried to resolve my feelings and get over her. I even went to lengths of avoiding her. I always encounter her at school because my little sister had a phase where she didn't want to be left at school. Since I work remotely anyway, I bring my laptop and wait for my sister in the waiting area. Danny would always greet me and even bring my sister to me at the end of the day. So anyway, I couldn't get over her, so I thought, fuck it, I'll give it a shot. Luck must have been on my side because I ran into her while I was out one evening. So I took my shot and asked her. She looked surprised because her eyes widened and she didn't respond right away. Like she just stared at me. I was so embarrassed. I quickly apologized and ran, literally. I felt so mature for running, especially since she called after me. But I poured all my confidence in this and I got so embarrassed. Now, I don't know how to face her after. Look, I don't know. The way that Opie was talking about it, it felt like they were just, sort of dancing around each other in some way in the first part of the post. Maybe I'm just being a bit too positive there. Maybe that was not the case. But it felt like they were both interested in each other and don't know how to approach it. Maybe they both thought it was inappropriate because, being a teacher and approaching a guardian in that way would be seen as inappropriate, and perhaps the other way round at the same time. But a commenter says, how did you know if you didn't even let her respond? Opie says, I know, I just assumed. Thinking about it now, I should have waited for an answer. It's just that I was already having second thoughts about asking her out, so I panicked when she couldn't answer right away, which was only fair since I surprised her. Cheesy says, now I'm curious what her answer is. It's still not a no. She was just in shock because she didn't expect this. Opie says, I'm curious too, but I'm way too embarrassed to find out now. Commenter says, you miss 100% of shots you don't take. Abraham Lincoln. Always wait for an answer. Thomas Jefferson. Carbon says, it is possible she didn't know you were gay and was caught off guard. Then you just run away. Maybe give her a chance to talk to you. Opie responded saying, oh my god, you're probably right. I dress and act feminine and my sexuality was never brought up in any of our convos. There wasn't any reason to. I should have made it clear first. I acted so stupid. I just got so panicked and embarrassed. Seiko says, girl, stop saying you're embarrassed and text her or something. You're a grown woman. I'm also in a WLW, so I understand the anxiety, but literally, just talk to her instead of complaining about what you should have done. Don't self-sabotage. She might like you back. So Opie did come in with an update and said, hey, so it's me again. I have an update on the most embarrassing moment of my life. So I recently asked a girl I like out, right? Stupid me got so embarrassed about it, I ran away before she could answer. I wanted to disappear, but thanks to all your support and encouragement, we finally talked properly. She actually ended up reaching out to me first, but since I had her personal social media account blocked from mine because I tried to get over her before I asked her out and forgot about it, she reached out to me through a work account. She was really confused because 1, she didn't know I was into women. I'm a bi, but I dress feminine. 2, I put her in an awkward situation in public. There wasn't a lot of people who could have overheard us, but that was still awkward, and that was on me, so I apologize for this as well. 3, why couldn't she find my socials through a personal account? So I officially apologized for all the trouble I did, and she actually laughed. Not in a mean way. I also told her I had a crush on her for a while now and had a sudden burst of confidence that time. She said she was glad I did. Otherwise, she would have just admired me from afar because she never thought I was gay. She said she liked me for a while now too and always tried to make our paths cross just to see me. I was like, oh my god. Anyway, she asked me again if I can add her on her personal socials, and I did. I also explained that I blocked her there before because I was trying to move on from her. She found it cute. I don't know why. I found it cringy. Anyway, we had our first date last weekend. It was super awkward, lol. Like, we talked a lot on chats and stuff. We even call each other at night sometimes and we talk non-stop. But when we had our first physical date, we barely spoke any words. When we were having coffee, she had a pastry with it, right? So I tried to reach for her hand and I kid you not, it was right next to her food. So she quickly moved the food away. It was like those memes, and I didn't know there are some people who really did that. Like, I had my own food. I wouldn't take hers. We were both shocked at what she did and she immediately apologized. She said she just had brothers growing up and she moved on instinct. Lol. I wouldn't know because I only have a sister. I guess it was her turn to be awkward now. Maybe we'll make this into a routine now. We laughed about it though, and we finally held hands. Anyway, thank you so much for all your support and encouragement. I was ready to be eaten by the ground, but your comments really uplifted me, and a lot of them made me laugh too. Top commenter says to AP, this actually turned out way better than expected. The awkward first date is completely normal, especially when you already built everything over text. The hand moment is funny as hell too, that's 100% a reflex thing. Also the fact that she liked you too the whole time. Yeah, you fumbled into a win. Just keep seeing her. It'll get less awkward fast. Opie says, hey, thanks. Yeah, so we're planning on going out again soon. I now know to watch out for her food, but yeah, we're so much closer through texts and chats, so we're probably on our way to be closer when we're together physically. Commenter says, so when are you moving in together? Commenter said, OP posted this from the U-Haul place while her crush was signing the rental agreement. I just wanted to cover one more comment that was on the Best of Renter updates thing that just said, holy shit, OP has no chill, none whatsoever. Avoiding her very conspicuously, blocking her on social media instead of just unfriending her, asking her out and then running away. I really hope she learns to loosen up a little, or a lot. But now, I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories, your love, your support, your time. It always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being here. Truly is absolutely amazing. And hopefully I'm going to see you in the next one. Take care and much love.